Let's talk hair loss. The data say that by the age of 50, 50% of men will have experienced hair loss, and by the age of 70, 80% of men will have experienced hair loss, and I'd argue the numbers are even higher than that. But is there a way to stop it? Well, for decades we've put billions of dollars into research to try to stop hair loss. We have a ton of data on it, especially on what causes hair loss, and the funny thing is that most treatments don't even really get to the root cause of hair loss. Not only that, but a lot of times they're doing a lot more harm than they are doing good. So today, let's dive into what causes hair loss and what doesn't. You might be surprised here, and talk about what I think the best treatment modalities to date are. So to start, let's talk a little bit about the classic model for hair loss. That is the idea that dihydrotestosterone, or DHT for short, interacts with the hair follicle and causes it to miniaturize, or basically shrink and kind of kill it off. This is basically the running theory, and this is the basis of basically all of the medications. So we have things like finasteride and dutasteride, and these are 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. What 5-alpha reductase is the enzyme that converts testosterone into DHT. So the idea behind these medications are that we inhibit that enzyme so that the testosterone can't be turned into DHT. Then of course the idea or the hope is that with less DHT we have less hair loss. The problem is these drugs are what I consider to be messy drugs because they don't only stop the conversion of testosterone to DHT, but they interact on other hormones as well, namely neurosteroids. For example, progesterone into allopregnenolone is facilitated via the enzyme 5-alpha reductase. So when you're taking finasteride or dutasteride, when you're inhibiting that enzyme, you're also inhibiting that conversion. Having lower levels of allopregnenolone is definitely associated with depression. In fact, it's thought to be one of the causes of postpartum depression. And it's not uncommon for guys who are taking finasteride to feel depressed or complain of brain fog because it is interacting with these neurosteroid cascades. Other side effects commonly associated with these medications are low libido, poor erection quality, even shrinkage of the penis. So, yeah, I'm not so sold on that one, but hey, it's a possibility. Watery semen, and suicide, which is kind of a big deal. So with these medications, you've got your hair, but you're too depressed to go out and find a girl. But if you do happen to go find a girl, well then you have no libido to have sex. And if she somehow talks you into having sex, well then you can't get it up. If you do get it up, it's maybe smaller than normal. Just kidding. Again, I don't think that's really a thing, but potentially. But if you do get it up and you blow your load, it's going to be watery and she's going to think you're weird. I don't know, this just doesn't sound like a great medication in my opinion. This constellation of symptoms is commonly referred to as post-finasteride syndrome, or PFS for short. Interestingly, this is not thought to be a real symptom, and it's supposedly just made up by guys and forum trolls on the internet. But after having seen at least probably 500 guys come through complaining of these symptoms, and taking to the Reddit forums where you see literally thousands of men complaining of these symptoms, I tend to think that this is an actual real diagnosis that people truly experience. What also adds to this belief is that the company who made this medication settled out of court saying that they actually did know about these symptoms, they just didn't want to report them. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that's pretty fucking sketchy. But the super odd thing with this medication is that some guys take it and feel completely fine, while other guys take it and are just completely decimated. But my question here is DHT actually the only or the root cause driver of hair loss? I personally don't think so. Let's just think about this a little bit. So we already talked about guys lose their hair as they age. Well, what else happens as we age? It's well known that we produce less and less testosterone as we age, and therefore we can assume we're producing less and less DHT, because without testosterone there is not DHT, right? So as men age and as men have less DHT, they lose more hair. Well, that right there kind of disproves this whole DHT theory to me. And a counter argument to that would be, well, hey, these medications like finasteride and dutasteride actually work when we do clinical trials on them, and I would agree, yeah, they do seem to. So my proposition here is that DHT may play a role, and it probably does because of that data showing that these medications work, but I don't think that it's the only thing that drives hair loss. You see, the human body is super complex and nothing happens in a vacuum. There's no one disease that's caused by only one factor and one factor alone. For example, take diabetes. Diabetes is not caused independently and only by glucose. It's a host of other issues that all together form the issue of diabetes. Same goes with atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, or ASCVD for short. It is not caused solely and only independently by cholesterol. It's again a constellation of various factors that all come together to form the disease. So why then would we think that DHT and DHT alone causes hair loss? In my opinion, thinking that DHT alone causes hair loss is way too myopic. When thinking about this, I really like the example of cholesterol and ASCVD. Yes, cholesterol is necessary for ASCVD, but it is not sufficient, meaning that we need other things to occur for that cholesterol to be able to cause the damage that it does. Like we need damage to the arterial wall, we need inflammation, etc., etc., etc. So yes, androgens and DHT may play a role in hair loss, but I I think that a ton of other things need to occur first. So I tried to make this little diagram to tell you a little bit about what's going on here, but essentially DHT in a healthy follicle will actually cause hair growth. We know this, it's well documented in the literature. However, when the hair follicle has been exposed to inflammation and microvascular disease, etc., the DHT will then actually cause hair loss. So this is very situation specific, meaning DHT is playing a role, but there is a ton of other factors contributing. So what I'm proposing is that we look at hair loss from the lens of all of these different vectors are causing it. Let's try to chip away at each one of them. Let's dive into some of the things that may be causing hair loss. Again, what I'm stating here is DHT does not cause hair loss in isolation. DHT is going to interact with the follicles that have been exposed to inflammation, ischemia, which means lack of blood flow, prostaglandins, and fibrosis. We also know that other hormones are implicated here. Really, all androgens can interact with the hair follicle and cause damage. We all know somebody who's gone on Mastrone or Anavar and said that these things will just ruin their hairline. Well, that in and of itself kind of tells us that DHT isn't the only driver of hair loss, right? Because these DHT derivatives, they can't be 5-alpha reduced into DHT, yet people are saying that they're causing hair loss. So either they're full of shit, or we can realize that all androgens probably interact with the hair follicle to some extent and can cause damage. It's also well documented in the literature that high prolactin will drive hair loss as well. And this is interesting because when people have high levels of prolactin, that usually has an inhibitory role on testosterone. So with lower testosterone and higher prolactin, we can assume that we have lower DHT too, yet hair is still falling out. Again, more evidence to say that DHT isn't the only driver here. We also see that IGF-1 can contribute in some way to hair loss. Now it seems when people are using growth hormone, which is driving IGF-1, that their hair actually is a little bit better and grows a little bit better, but when they remove it or they have large fluctuations in growth hormone and IGF-1, this is when the hair loss occurs. Now this is a constant theme of all of the PED-induced side effects is when we get large fluctuations in hormones, we usually cause some damage. For example, large fluctuations in breast tissue hormones causes gyno. Large fluctuations of hormones can drive acne, and again, large fluctuations of hormones can drive hair loss. Inflammation is next on our list, and this is probably one of the largest drivers, and this is caused by multiple different vectors. For example, just having too high of androgens and too little estradiol can be highly inflammatory. Eating too much food can be highly inflammatory. Of course, we all know certain foods are more inflammatory than others, but even just working out to failure can, in a way, be inflammatory. And yes, it's a good kind of inflammation for the most part, but in bodybuilders, etc., who may take this a little too far, that's driving large quantities of inflammation, which can interact with the hair follicle and cause damage. Insulin resistance is well documented to also cause damage to the hair follicle, and this is usually via damage to the microvascular system. So the glucose, high levels of glucose, and the actual insulin itself can cause issues with the microvascular system, damaging those vessels that would supply the hair and leading to ischemia and death of the hair follicle. High levels of glucose can also cause glycosylation of the hair follicle, which basically means, like sugar is forming around the hair follicle and damaging it. Hypoxia also seems to be a massive driver, and there's a lot of theories to what causes hypoxia, and one of those is just that our scalp is extremely tight. Other causes are ones that we've pretty much already mentioned, like inflammation, insulin resistance, peripheral vascular disease, and so on. So when looking at this, it's clear that DHT is not the only thing that drives hair loss. So what I propose is that if you want to try to combat hair loss and even reverse it, then we need to try to check off some of these boxes and improve them. And that's going to start with reducing stressors on your scalp. So that's excessive sun, excessive heat like from a blow dryer, and excessive chemicals from cosmetic products like hair dye and hair products, etc. Now we need to improve blood flow. So that can be as simple as scalp massage. You can do this yourself in the shower. Just rub your scalp down and that will stimulate some blood flow to the area. The whole premise behind microneedling is that it's driving more blood flow and growth factors to the area. And of course, we need to have good cardiovascular health. That means doing your cardio and having good blood flow, but also making sure that you have good metabolic health and good cardiovascular health, meaning no plaque buildup in those arteries that could constrict the flow to the scalp. We of course want to try to reduce inflammation, so remove as many stressors as possible, meaning anything that's driving up inflammation. Increase your antioxidants. Some of my favorites are NAC, glutathione, vitamin C, melatonin. There's even topical melatonin out there that's shown to be very promising when it comes to hair regrowth. Want to improve insulin sensitivity, ensure that you don't have inappropriate high levels of insulin when you don't need them. So with that, build some muscle, increase your cardiovascular capacity, reduce your caloric load, Usually that's enough to significantly improve insulin sensitivity, but if you need some help with pharmacology, we have metformin, GLP-1 agonists, etc., etc. Now again, I'd love to harp on this, we need to keep hormone levels as stable as possible. So if you're somebody using PEDs or TRT, you want to do more frequent injections, you don't want these massive fluctuations in your hormones. And of course, improve your micronutrient intake. I suggest using an app like Chronometer and tracking your micronutrients, ensuring that you're getting them in. One of my favorite sources for micronutrients is actually beef liver, and I know that sounds super disgusting, and I'm not one of those crazy carnivore zealots that's going to tell you to eat organ meat all the time. Though I do believe that these are a great source of micronutrients, and so what I do is take beef liver capsules. Now the cool thing is that Gorilla Mind just introduced beef liver capsules because Derek is a huge fan of liver as well, and he understands that most of us don't want to eat that shit because it's foul. I've been using these for a while. I really like them. I kind of think of them as nature's multivitamin, if you will. So if you want, go over, use my code ATLAS. It'll save you 10%. Go grab some right now. Now, when it comes to treating hair loss, I think that we need to take a multimodal approach to this because there's so many different things that could be contributing. Let's try to knock them all off instead of just reducing the most potent androgen in our body, because we know that having low DHT sucks. It basically takes away everything that you want to feel as a man. So I understand that we may need to act on DHT to some extent, but let's not just completely nuke DHT and just completely forget about everything else. Let's try to do everything else too, and maybe do some DHT modulation if necessary. So here are some of the treatments that I would maybe potentially propose on top of all the lifestyle modifications that we just went over. Minoxidil, we all know minoxidil is Rogaine. You can buy it over the counter at 5%. The way that minoxidil works is by increasing blood flow to the follicle. It's been shown to reduce inflammation and it reduces fibrosis. Now, one of the issues with minoxidil is that we don't all absorb it very well because we don't all have high levels of sulfotransferase on our scalp. So this is where tretinoin comes in. It'll increase that follicular sulfotransferase and lead to better absorption. Now, microneedling and minoxidil has been described as a 1 + 1 = 3. By microneedling as well, you're increasing blood flow, increasing growth factors to the area, and most importantly, increasing the absorption of minoxidil into the scalp. People do take this orally as well, but the problem with that is that you kind of get hair growth all over the body, and we're really just trying to target the scalp. Now, if you want to be kind of a woolly mammoth and do that, then by all means, you could potentially take the oral as well, but I tend to prefer just the topical application. I personally use minoxidil every day, and that's really all that I do for my hair, and I use the Intelligent Shop's minoxidil. I really like this stuff. I have it in my hair right now. It's not greasy in any way, and it's also 10% off if you go use code ATLAS at Intelligent Shop. One of the newer treatment modalities is this newer peptide called ghk-cu, which has been shown to reduce inflammation, stimulate collagen and elastin, and promote growth factors to the area. Now, this seems super cool. I don't think that it really has any negative side effects when applied topically. Now, if you're injecting this stuff, one thing that you need to consider, of course, is that copper can lower levels of zinc, so you may need to supplement with zinc concurrently. But the topical application of this, I think, will stay pretty localized and not really lead to any issues with zinc systemically. Next would be latanoprost, which is a prostaglandin analog, and this has historically been used for glaucoma treatment. And when we were using it for glaucoma treatment, we noticed that eyelashes were growing thicker and fuller. So of course, women jumped on this, and you can get Latisse, which is a similar product to latanoprost that will actually help to grow eyelashes. So the idea is the same here. You put it on the scalp and it stimulates hair growth. Again, I haven't seen very many, if any, systemic side effects to this, so I really like the idea of using latanoprost to stimulate growth as well. And then there's the idea of using these topical 5-alpha reductase inhibitors like finasteride or dutasteride. Well, the problem here is that they still get absorbed. If you're using topical finasteride, it will 100% still be absorbed. We see this clear as day in the literature, and I've seen it a million times on lab work. So when these companies like Hims and Keeps and all of them are selling you topical finasteride, it's pretty stupid in my opinion. You might as well just be taking the oral because you're still getting systemic absorption. Then there's the idea of topical dutasteride, and dutasteride of course is more potent than finasteride, but the idea is that supposedly the Dalton size is too large to be absorbed. But I'll tell you, after looking at literally thousands of different men's labs who use topical dutasteride, the stuff does get absorbed. I often see DHT levels drop significantly when they're using the topical. So that's telling me that yes, it's likely getting absorbed to some extent. I understand the theory that the Dalton size is too large and it isn't absorbed, but I think what may be potentially happening is that they have some type of break in the skin. This could be in the form of like an ingrown hair that's inflamed, or a small pimple on the scalp somewhere, or a scratch, something is introducing the dutasteride into the skin and then it's going systemic. So I personally don't really buy this whole it's too big to be absorbed, because I see it get absorbed all the time. But again, I fully understand that we may need to lower DHT, so this would be the option that I would go for, because I do think it has the least amount of absorption. The idea is that it just stays at the scalp, locks the DHT there, and allows your systemic DHT to be higher. But before ever doing that, I would definitely get lab work, and I actually don't care about the levels of DHT in the serum, meaning in the blood, because I don't think that that really matters much. We know that because when we look at the prostate, for example, the levels of DHT in the blood actually make virtually no difference to the levels of DHT in the prostate. The prostate regulates its own levels of DHT, and we know that's true in the skin as well. So yet again, we see companies being shady where they take your blood and they run your DHT, and they tell you that the levels of DHT in your blood are somehow going to correlate to the effect that it has on your prostate or your hair loss, and it doesn't. When I was getting lab work, I would definitely look at my neurosteroids first, particularly pregnenolone and progesterone, and make sure that those levels are okay, because again, if this does get into systemic circulation, we're going to have some inhibition of pregnenolone and progesterone, or specifically progesterone in this case, into allopregnenolone, which could lead to some of the brain fog, depressive-like symptoms. I personally think it's likely a pretty good idea to preventatively supplement with pregnenolone on top of even topical dutasteride if you need to go down that road. So I hope this has been a pretty thorough explanation of the things that drive hair loss. Again, it is not only DHT, so men, please stop taking these medications and causing yourself serious harm when there is 10 other things contributing to it. Do all of the things. Of course, we may need to do some DHT reduction, possibly, but I think that we could get a lot further with doing some of the other stuff first. If you found any value in this video, hit that subscribe button, or just watch this next video on other side effects that you may experience with TRT or other PEDs.